Hello, welcome to my presentation about the intersection of housing instability and child welfare. This is by me, Ariel App. So the overview for this project, I chose selected literature to study. So I chose a qualitative article, a cross-sectional, and a controlled article. Each study related to housing instability and or child maltreatment. The three studies led to the formulation of my research question. I identified important variables, then I chose the sample, then I created and distributed the survey, analyzed the results, found the conclusion, and explained the results and implications. And then following that, I share with you the lessons that I learned. So the summary of my relevant literature includes my qualitative descriptive study. And this study addresses the gap in understanding between family risk and housing instability. The cross-sectional study that I chose, the results showed that participants who had substantiated child welfare cases were more likely to be identified as having significant or severe housing risks. And the longitudinal controlled study demonstrated that housing affordability may protect against maltreatment, but other domains of housing insecurity appeared to have little or no effect. This brought me to my research question. I wanted to know what the sustainable solutions to housing instability and homelessness are among families referred for child maltreatment. So these are all the types of variables and how they were operationalized. The demographic that I needed was from caseworkers in DCFS. I needed to know whether they had past or current cases where housing was a barrier and how it was a barrier, how they addressed the barrier, and once they addressed it, if it was still an ongoing issue. I also really was interested in finding out what agencies and resources they utilized, which ones helped their clients stay in housing, and then if they use different resources to help their clients stay in housing versus helping their clients acquire new housing. And then mostly I wanted to know if these resources were sustainable. The sample was chosen and recruited from DCFS caseworkers. I only had contact information for the Salt Lake City and Sandy offices of DCFS, so that's where this sample came from. There were 30 respondents. I created a Google Forms survey and sent it out to the caseworkers that I had email addresses for. And I framed questions to gain insight about the size of the problem. I used a quasi-experimental cross-sectional approach, and I used a convenience sample method. These are copies of all the questions that were on my survey. I had quantitative and qualitative questions. They were made into multiple choice questions, yes, no, other, and fill in the blank questions. So you can see some of these. I was trying to find how the housing instability was a barrier, if it was a barrier to safety, stability, or reunification. I listed some agencies to see if DCFS caseworkers were using these, and then I offered them a chance to write about any other solutions that they've found helpful or sustainable. In my data analysis, I found that 93.3% of caseworkers have current or past cases where housing was a barrier with their clients. 79.3% reported it was a barrier to their stability. 51.7% reported that it was a barrier to safety, and 44.8% reported that it was a barrier to reunification for their families. And even after addressing the issue, 70% of caseworkers reported that it is still an ongoing issue for their clients. Caseworkers reported that only 20% of their clients had stable housing, which is a really small number. 56.7% of caseworkers have utilized resources to help their clients stay in housing, and the majority of them use the DCFS grant funding to help their clients stay in housing. And then these agencies and resources down here are the most utilized by caseworkers to acquire housing for their clients. The FUP housing voucher, the road home shelter services, Section 8 housing, rapid rehousing, community action program, and short-term rental assistance. And the results, I showed two different graphics here. The one in black here on the right is my qualitative graphic. And then this one down here on the bottom is my quantitative graphic. I just chose one from the survey. The way you read the qualitative graphic is the larger the word appears, the more frequently it was chosen as a response. So this housing application and housing voucher, DCFS grant and shelter, you can see those are much bigger because they were chosen as a response more often. Then there were other, wraparound services, rental assistance, referrals, relatives. Someone said nothing can be done. So this is what I gathered from asking qualitative or open-ended questions. And then this was a question that came from the survey. Did it help the family to maintain long-term housing, which was referencing one of the resources or whatever resources they mentioned? Did it help them to maintain long-term housing? And of course, you can see the answers here. About half said that yes, it did help maintain long-term housing, which is great. And this voucher here shows the most selected resource that was used by DCFS caseworkers. So that turned out to be 46.7% of a response of yes, that the housing voucher did help them maintain long-term housing. And the lessons learned, I already knew about the scarcity of affordable housing, but I didn't realize just how much it threatens family functioning and child well-being. All 50 US states have a shortage of affordable housing units, with an absolute shortage of 3.4 million rental homes for low-income households nationwide. The homelessness systems and the child protective systems often feed into each other. One resource that has been a viable solution for homelessness is staying with relatives, family, or friends. There are several community resources available to caseworkers and clients that I've found from doing this research project. One suggestion given by a caseworker is to apply for housing early if clients show a need, so they get them on that list immediately. Most families involved in the child welfare system live in poverty. The way it shows up is by them being unstably housed. And homeless families usually have incomes that are too low to sustain acceptable housing without a housing subsidy. Studies have shown that women who experience housing instability have also experienced high rates of previously undisclosed trauma, broken family relationships, early parenting responsibilities, social isolation, and system failures that contribute to recurrent episodes of housing instability. DCFS grants can be helpful to keep families in housing. FUP housing voucher is the most utilized option within the Salt Lake metropolitan area used by DCFS caseworkers. And here is my reference page. Thank you so much for watching the presentation.